Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond, one season and one episode at a time. We're now on Season 7, Episode 16, Sweet Charity. Now, I got two things to mention before I get too far into this video. One, this is the second time I had to record this, so if my enthusiasm seems a little down at points compared to the last episode and the next ones, sorry about that, because this is a re-recording. And on top of that, with it, this is an episode that, while I did enjoy it more now watching it as an adult than I recall the last time I watched it, which, if memory serves, I think I've watched this episode 2 times tops with the DVD. It's just not one that has a lot of moments that I can think stand out, except for the one part of the episode I did remember, which I will address. Second, a little fun fact here, is that there seems to be, I don't know if I'd say it's a mix-up, a contradiction, but it's something a little squirrely going on with the numbering of this in the next episode, Meet the Parents. On the DVD, it lists the next episode as episode 16, and it lists this episode as episode 17. However, on IMDb and also on Peacock, and IMDb I think is a little bit more accurate since it also includes the air dates, it lists this episode as 16 and it lists the next one as 17. Why this happened, I don't know. Just looking at the episodes, I can think of a couple reasons. One, they wanted to start this disc off with the commentary, so they switched the order. And two, they wanted a buffer episode between the Meeting the Parents episode and the Wedding Invitation episode, instead of one leading right into the other. They kind of like make it seem like it's not like full sprinting through it. But looking through it, other than that, other than this one, the only episode from now to then that is not at least wedding themed is Sleepover at Peggy's. I mean, it kind of mentions Peggy's divorce there, but everything else involves either this wedding or marriage in general. Because let's see, let's plan. Who's next? Replacement spouses. The shower, that's about the wedding shower and a certain DUI incident. Baggage, it's a marriage argument that was Emmy worthy. The bachelor party, goes without saying. And then finally, the wedding. The only time they could really do a buffer for anything marriage related is there, but I think it's pretty stupid. I mean, thankfully, the switch does not create any big errors, because this episode doesn't really directly mention anything. I think other than like a little thing at the beginning where they mention that they don't want to tell them they're engaged, I think that's about it. Which, if that's the case, that really is a bad thing to do. And in case that doesn't make it obvious, it has been about a week or so since I watched this episode, so some stuff like that is starting to slip my mind, especially since I've done reviews on episodes I've watched after that, so sorry off the top of my head, off the top of things, if the review isn't as good. You can come on in, Odie. Come on. And now, after 3 minutes of me just rambling on, now, the plot of this episode. It's called Sweet Charity, which, of course, it's named after a classic Broadway musical, which I'm not going to go into who wrote it when it came out, because I don't feel like going down to it. It's another episode written by Aaron Shuri, which that's a name that, or Aaron Shur, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but S-H-U-R-E, whatever. So, most of you might remember that name. It's one that I brought up a couple times within the last few seasons. He's not as prolific as Kali and some of the others, but he pops up. And you can definitely see a little bit of his fingerprints here with the dynamic. And this is the plot according to IMDb. Debra signs up for charity work and signs up Ray for an hour of charity at the hospital. He is reluctant but goes. Turns out the patients enjoy his humor and sports information, and he enjoys going. Debra is upset at how often he is gone. And that is everything in a nutshell. As it goes, Debra tells Ray, yeah, I signed you up for some charity work over at the hospital. And given how we know Ray is after 7 seasons, about to hit the 8th season, we know he's not going to like it. Debra talks him into going, and he's like, fine. And you can tell the moment Ray gets to the hospital, he's out of his element. Once he gets off the elevator, that shot of him looking around like, what am I supposed to be doing here? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. You can tell he's very, very nervous. Goes, talks with the nurse, doesn't know how to sign, which I do understand that whole thing, because it's like, yeah, I do not know what I'm supposed to be doing here. Odie, if you want to come in, just push the door open and come in. Sorry about that, guys. He's starting to whine in the other room, even though the door is ajar, and he knows how to push a door open with his snout. Can you stop whining now? I swear at that dog sometimes. Now, they put him in a room to go talk with his older African-American lady, try to get her to take her meds. He goes in there. It's a little awkward at first. They have an interesting discussion, but he eventually does. And as we've seen a handful of times before, while he might be a little hesitant at first and a little bit in the awkward stages, once he gets into the zone, he's right there. The best example I could think of for that is the charity auction episode, where he's not going good at first, but then, even though it's at Debra's expense, once everything starts going, he gets into his element, boom, he's the best auctioneer in the room. Well, because he gets into the zone, and the patients do love his brandy humor, the whole glove blowing up thing, and of course loving his sports information because he is a writer. I mean, even though we know through the show's history there are people out there that don't like him, it mainly seems to be other people who either are in the entertainment business or in the sports world for some reason. I guess you say professional jealousy, as I've touched on a couple times. The fans do like him, especially these ones. And the combination, he makes him a hit. Now, the problem is, Ray is good at it, and he enjoys doing it, but then he decides he's going to do it a lot more. Which you can already see where the issue is going to go there. Because one, at least from how Debra looks at it, it's already bad enough that he has gone from the house as much as he is, leaving her to do most of the house stuff. Then when she suggests a charity thing, and puts it at like 1 hour a week to do, he decides he's going to do more, and has gone even more, put more of the work on her. So she decides it's time to do some sabotage. And she sends in Lieutenant Barone. Good old Robert. But at first he doesn't realize it, and later, that's part of the humor, is that he finds out that it was as a sabotage. And Ray finding out that Robert went to go do the charity is the one scene from this episode I remember. And he walks in, a lot of the old folks are already in the big room, and Robert is there with traffic cop Timmy, and this is where that line comes in. Oh, come on, Timmy, these poor people didn't come here to be insulted. Yeah, well, then they should cinch their robes. There's that moment, and that's even the main photo up on the IMDb page, and by the time this goes live, you see it's most likely going to be the image, the thumbnail image for this episode. Of course, you can imagine Ray and Robert, they kind of butt heads a little bit. Ray tries to steal a spotlight back. He's not made of wood, he's made of plastic, and tries to steal the humor back, but he bombs even with the stuff they like. And you can kind of see why, because one, he ruined the show by coming in out of nowhere like an RKO. And two, they were not in the zone for that humor that night. So it's a combination of those both. And the rest of the episode involves Debra's little plan coming out, her having a conversation with Ray, and it's more or less what you would expect from this type of episode. And like I said earlier, it's been over a week, so I'm sorry if I'm not going into a lot of the minutia like I try to do with these ones. But that, combined with this being the second take, it just don't have it in me, especially since I didn't bother putting the notes and all that with it, other than that one little fact I already mentioned. And like I said earlier, it is an episode I enjoy watching more. I could see myself watching this one more when I actually start marathon watching the show again. But it's probably going to depend on my mood. Like, I probably will next time, but it's going to depend on my mood. Now, given the fact that it is named after a Broadway show, has charity in there, and we have Patricia Heaton in the cast, it does end with her doing some singing, but for the charity. And I don't know if that's a musical number from the show, but if it is, it was a perfect use of it, and it's the perfect way to end this episode. And of course, from here on out, like I mentioned, every episode except for the one involving Peggy is going to involve marriage in some capacity, and even that one kind of does from the peripheral. And we're going to be continuing through this arc, and I'm trying to figure out where in here I'll probably mention it. I'll probably mention it in the finale, though, about my thoughts on how the show would be looked at if this was the ending, and I'll probably bring out the DVD copies I have for the next 2 seasons to talk about the episodes from there and which ones I remember, which most of them are going to be from season 8, because that's the one of those 2 that I mainly watched first run, even though there's a lot of episodes in there I didn't watch for one reason or another. And I can't remember many from the last season I watched in the first run. But that's really all to say about this episode, so stay tuned for next episode where we're going to finally get to see the Barones meeting the parents. Till then, everybody.